This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granick-Allen. As Canadians, we often pride ourselves on being a trading nation, open, reliable, and globally connected. And yet, while Canada grapples with rising protectionism from the United States, including the latest round of tariffs on key exports like aluminum and lumber, we seem to be ignoring an equally urgent issue at home: the trade barriers between our own provinces. That's right. In 2025, it is still, in many cases, easier to trade with the US or Europe than it is to sell wine from BC to Ontario or move construction materials across the Quebec border. These interprovincial trade barriers, a maze of inconsistent rules, licensing restrictions, and regulatory duplication, are silently draining billions of dollars from our national economy and stifling opportunity for Canadian workers and businesses. As Washington plays hardball and global trade alliances are shifting, Canada should be pulling together internally. Instead, we're still behaving like 13 separate economies. Well, to help us understand how we got here and what can be done to finally break down those internal walls, I'm joined tonight by Professor Ian Lee of Carleton University. He's an expert in business policy and public administration, and he's long called for serious reform in Canada's broken internal market. Professor Lee, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I really punched out the issue, because
Yep.
I was one of the few Canadians, even though I studied political science, that wasn't aware just the sheer magnitude of the interprovincial barriers that exist.
Tanya, you're absolutely right. And this has been going on, let's be very clear. This has been going on for years and years. It probably, I'm sure if I went back to 1867, they were there. But they've certainly been there my entire life. And they're just in big picture sense, so everybody understands. We're not talking tariffs, because only the national government under the Constitution can impose tariffs on goods coming into the country, because only the federal government controls the border. We don't have a provincial border control, okay? So what provinces have done, and it's overwhelmingly at the provincial level. Yes, there are federal barriers that create differences in trade, but they were few and far between. They were much fewer, and Prime Minister Carney has just put out that bill, introduced that bill, or the government has introduced that bill to reduce most of the federal barriers. They, I argue, were never the problem. It was overwhelmingly the provinces, and I'm just going to say the provinces rather than that long phrase, the provinces and the three territories. And they are, so everybody understands, they're essentially non-tariff barriers. Most people don't call them that, but that's what they are. They're barriers, but they're not using tariffs. People say, how can you do that? Well, you can do really simple things, in which we do, and they're pernicious. I argue, I disagree respectfully with Professor Thom, who I admire enormously and quote his data all the time. He says that they weren't imposed for nefarious reasons. Well, it depends on your definition of nefarious. I think they were put in to, it's just good old-fashioned protectionism, to create an advantage for the companies and employers in that province, Ontario or BC or Alberta, to give their own companies a leg up. Everyone says, hey, that's great. Isn't that wonderful? Well, for all my adult life, I've been attacking tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, because what do? Reduce competition so that the companies protected in that industry in that province can do what? Charge you higher prices. That's what monopoly companies do when they are protected. We see it in the cell phone, the telecom industry. We have exactly 3 telecom providers because the law prohibits foreign telecom. So guess what? We have some of the highest cell phone fees in the world.
I know, and remember, we had the Spectrum auction, and we thought, here, we're going to open it up, and then slowly those the new auctioned bandwidth got swallowed up by the carriers again.
Yes. So what I want for your listeners is to understand that interprovincial trade barriers can be summarized in one word: protectionism. And so when premiers, and they do it all the time, I'm here to protect you, I argue this is an Orwellian term used by Premier Ford and other premiers. No, let's not pick only on Premier Ford. They all do it, Liberal, Conservative, and NDP. So this is nonpartisan. When they say they're out to protect you, what they're saying is, I'm going to create a concentrated economy with fewer competitors, and then they can go and charge you higher prices. Now, I don't mean that that's their motive. That's the outcome.
That is the
So
outcome.
that's why tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, called interprovincial trade barriers, are so pernicious and destructive, and they hurt millions, all of us in Canada.
Well, when we come back from this commercial break, I want you to give us some concrete examples as to how this is impacting you, the consumer. We'll be right back.